and joining. And everyone watching from YouTube, hello as well. So just to do a brief little intro, my name is Griffin Shawless. I'm one of our undergraduate financial aid counselors here at Pacific, and I'm going to talk a little bit about financial aid opportunities here at Pacific University, both being kind of aspects of your current financial aid package, right? And how to maintain that current financial aid that you're getting. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about some additional resources that can extend beyond that, right? And go on top of your current financial aid packages. So all things that are really good to know. There's a good chance for folks that some of this is going to be review. My view on it is as many times as I can get in front of you, the better, right? So we'll go ahead and keep moving forward here. And starting off, just to give us an idea of the kind of stuff we're going to talk about, we're going to look at kind of the financial aid timeline at Pacific. So important dates to keep on your radar. Many of these dates don't change from year to year too. So they're things that are going to kind of be constant throughout your time as a student at Pacific, which is really nice. We're going to talk a little bit about renewal criteria for your current financial aid, right? So things that you need to make sure you're staying on top of and things that you're doing to keep getting all the financial aid that you're currently getting at Pacific. Going to talk about financial aid opportunities through Pacific University, so some additional scholarship and aid opportunities that we have here. And then I'll talk a little bit about financial aid opportunities outside of Pacific University, so things that exist outside of our Pacific ecosystem, whether that be external scholarships through different organizations or different state orgs. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Finally, some important things to know and do moving forward for your financial aid packages, resources for managing college steps, and then some next things to do regarding financial aid as well. So looking at a timeline, just kind of a general timeline of financial aid at Pacific, typically on a normal year, we would consider the start of October to be the beginning of what I call the financial aid year. Students, continuing students specifically, you've probably noticed things are a little different this year. The FAFSA is opening up later than normal. So typically, October 1 would roll around and the FAFSA would open up. This year, the FAFSA is going to open up sometime in December. So a little bit later. They haven't given us a specific date. So I've been telling students, the most certain I can be is telling you that the FAFSA will open in a month that ends in BER. And that's about as specific as they've gotten with us right now. I'm hoping it's early December, the federal government. So we'll see what ends up actually happening. Moving on into the start of December is when our scholarship applications for our continuing students open. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these and show us the webpage for where you can find these. These are scholarship opportunities that are only for students that are currently at Pacific. They're awesome awards to take advantage of. Definitely something to keep on your radar for December 1st. And we'll talk a little bit about those later. March 1st, moving into next spring, is kind of when we start to see some deadlines come into play, right? So March 1st is the deadline not only for filing your FAFSA with Pacific for priority consideration for things like federal work study and federal SEOG. So if you want to be considered for those two, if they've been on your financial aid packages in the past, definitely just make sure you get that FAFSA in by March 1st. It's also going to be the deadline for those specific Pacific scholarships for continuing students that I mentioned. So March 1st is going to be a date to keep on your calendar as the deadline for a couple things financially related as well. And then it's also the deadline for the Oregon scholarship application, which I'll talk a little bit about as well later too. Moving on later into the spring term, really the middle of May is when continuing students can start to expect to see their financial aid packages get sent to them, right? So kind of starting in the middle of May, students will begin getting notifications for your financial aid award for the next coming year. You can start going through your financial aid checklist as well. Then these last two things on here, the August 15th and January 15th, are the respective payment due dates with the business office for each term. So those will either be the payment due dates for the term balance, or if you're on like a payment plan with the business office, would be the date to get that first payment in to them. One thing about these two dates is they do not change, right? And that's important because sometimes that means that they can fall on a weekend, right? So that means if it does fall on a weekend, just make sure that you're communicating with the business office to get everything set before then, as the business office is not open on the weekends, right? So if you reach out to them August 15th, January 15th, and it's Saturday or Sunday, you're not going to get something back from them until the next week as well, right? They also do have within these specific dates kind of a built-in grace period for payments, right? So There's a 10-day grace period following each of these dates. So if you need just a little bit more time to get things set with them, just stay in touch with the financial aid office, the business office, and we can work around kind of everything that you potentially would need. So again, the FAFSA is going to be opening a bit later this year. Federal statute dictates it has to be open by January 1st, 2024. So again, the federal government right now is saying December. I'm hoping it'll be the earlier half. Since it is federal government, it very well could be December 31st at 11:59 p.m., right? But with that being said, don't feel like you need to get into studentaid.gov every day in December to check if it's open. Once it is open, our office will be sending out communications. You'll be hearing from other departments on campus as well, I'm sure. So once it is open, I am positive that it is news that you are not going to be able to escape, right? So just know that once it's available, we'll be sending out communications. So just keep an eye on your email from the financial aid office once those applications open up as well. Just to give us an idea of the things continuing that are going to just automatically renew versus things that aren't, or things that need steps on your end to be completed, right? So your academic or merit scholarships and potentially senior preview day scholarships, those are going to renew automatically, students, as long as you maintain 2.0 GPA, 12 credits each semester. Aid that is need-based, so aid that's based on that FAFSA is going to renew as long as those criteria are still met, right? So 12 credits, 2.0 GPA, and you refile that FAFSA, right? So another reason to really keep an eye on your email this year specifically, right, is so that you can get that FAFSA done as soon as it opens up and continue getting all of that aid that you're eligible for, right? And so these are going to be potentially civic grants, potentially campus residence grants if you have those, FSCOG, Pell Grant, federal direct loans, work study, and then for Oregon residents, potentially the Oregon Opportunity Grant if you're eligible for that as well. Students, you've seen it before, and I know you're familiar with it, your financial aid checklist. You've gone through and done this potentially once, potentially more than once as well at this point. So just keep this on your radar as something you have to do before each term as well. You'll want to make sure that once you get your financial aid information, you log into your Voxer online, you pull up your financial aid checklist, and you want to just make sure anything that is yellow is green before. I tell students at least before 2 weeks before the classes start. So just make sure that you're getting in, doing that financial aid checklist. Our office will send out communication if you have steps still to do on your checklist. So just make sure, keep an eye on your email. I will say if there's ever a situation where certain aid isn't posting, or if there's issue with posting financial aid, I'd say 8 to 9 out of 10 times it's typically because just a step hasn't been done on the checklist. So just make sure you keep an eye on your email, keep an eye on your financial aid checklist, and getting those things completed before the start of the term, just so that there's no issues with your financial aid. I know this is something, students, that you hear all the time, right? You're probably sick of hearing it, but the best advice I can give is just to check your email portal regularly, right? The financial aid office does not send spam. We don't send emails to you just for fun, right? So if you get an email from us, it typically means there's either important info to know, right? Whether that means that the FAFSA is open, those continuing student scholarships are open, or it means that you're required to do something, right? Whether that's a step in your financial aid checklist or if there's anything else that our office needs from you to complete. So keep an eye on your email. If you see a subject line or if you see a from address of financial aid, just know that you should open the email because it's probably something important. Work study. So folks who are eligible for work study just want to make sure that, you know, how to find a position on campus is on your radar. So you can go to pacificu.edu/jobs, or I don't know if this is quicker, but this is the way that I always get to the job portal, is at the bottom of every Pacific webpage, there's a little careers tab. And if you click that and then you click students, it'll take you just to Paycom, which is where all of the student jobs live. Every position in there is going to be organized by either FWS or NWS. So FWS positions are specific to federal work study recipients. NWS is open to everyone, right? So students who are federal work study, you can apply to all of them. Students who aren't work study eligible, you'll be applying to those NWS positions. So just another resource to take advantage of, especially if you have work study on your financial aid package. And if you ever run into a situation where you're looking for a work position at Pacific University and not having any luck, you can always reach out to either academic and career advising. You can come by the financial aid office, and we'll see what we can do to get you connected to someone who's looking to hire students on campus, because typically there'll be folks, right? I actually was just looking at the job portal, I think a few nights ago. and there's something like between 60 and 70 student worker positions on there, with both a mix of federal work study eligible and then also non-work study, right? So people are trying to hire students kind of all throughout the year. I know sometimes students think that if they don't get something set in fall, either by going to the work and service fair or already have a job lined up, that they won't be able to work throughout the year. And that's just not the case, right? So there'll be more opportunities for job fairs here coming in spring. And then also just know that there are departments that are always looking to hire folks, right? Whether they have someone who graduates early after the fall term or someone doesn't come back to work for them in spring. There'll be some open positions in spring for you as well if you haven't started working by this point and are potentially interested. Talking about scholarship opportunities at Pacific University. So these are those scholarships that I mentioned for our continuing students. These open December 1st. They have a March 1st deadline. Within that time frame, I always tell students there isn't a priority for applicants who get it done earlier rather than later. The committees for these scholarships don't start reviewing them until after the deadline. With that being said, always recommend students get their applications in earlier, right? I know you get a little bit of a break in December and a bunch of folks still work during that time. So just picking a morning that you have an hour or two free, going through the list and just applying to as many as you're eligible for. This link here will take you directly to that page. I always recommend students apply for the top two, which are going to be the Boxer Spirit Awards. They're just the most general scholarships at Pacific. The criteria is just to be a student who has sophomore standing. They're 1-year awards that kind of range anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 for the year, but students can reapply to them yearly, right? So I've had students who have gotten the Boxer Spirit Award at $2,000 their sophomore and junior and also their senior year, right? So awesome opportunities to take advantage of. Please engage with those. Like I said, they're 1-year awards, but definitely apply to them each year you're a student at Pacific. For the general Boxer Spirit Award, we give a whole bunch of those out. So there are a good amount of recipients for those. I think just anecdotally, during my time being here at Pacific, I'll say not enough students engage with these resources, right? So students who do end up having a pretty decent shot at getting some form of additional financial support. So please be part of the students that engage with these resources, and let us give you some more money. Scholarship opportunities that exist kind of outside of the Pacific ecosystem. So starting us off here for potentially folks who are Oregon residents, there's what's called the OSAC scholarship application. And so OSAC is Oregon Office of Student Access and Completion. And this is a scholarship application that opened on November 1st. It's open to folks who are Oregon residents. It is one application for a scholarship, and it applies you to, I think at this point now, it's between 600 and 650 different scholarships through the state of Oregon. So definitely, if you are an Oregon resident, take advantage of this resource and apply for it. Moving on to talk about some scholarship search engines. And I think this is kind of where things can start to get really hit or miss. I've worked with students, and I think there is a varying degree of success with these scholarship search engines. Just doing a Google search for scholarships brings up like a horrifyingly large amount of results, but it's a lot of junk to potentially sift through, right? And I know students, you've got classes, many of you have practice schedule, game schedule, work. So you've got other stuff going on, right? And don't necessarily have the time to sift through a whole bunch of different scholarships, some of which might not be great resources in the first place. This list here are databases that I've found students have the most success with. So these are links to some scholarship databases that have outside resources. These are all free. Again, another thing is never, ever pay for a scholarship search engine. Please, right? There are free resources that are out there that are great for students. Most of them will want you to make some sort of profile with them, right? So they'll probably have you go through and enter information about you specifically, whether that's academic or things you do kind of outside of class as well. And they'll have you make sort of a profile with their website. And then what they do is they match you to scholarships that you're a fit for and can apply to. I've checked with most of these, and thankfully you can turn off like promotional emails, because a lot of times what happens is if you sign up for a scholarship search engine, you'll get promotional emails from them weekly, if not daily, and you will get those for the rest of your life. So thankfully with most of these, you can turn off those email notifications that aren't specifically about scholarships. With this, I always encourage students to, at a maximum, pick two, right? Pick two of these resources and really focus in and hone in on those. Like I said, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on, and there's not always the bandwidth to scour all of these different databases and websites. So pick one, pick two maximum to really focus in on, build profiles and start potentially getting matched to scholarships as well. Like I said, don't let it consume you. At a maximum, take, you know, an hour a week, I'd say at the very most, to sit down and go through these resources, just because it can be a frustrating search, right? One other thing as far as scholarships that I encourage folks to do is to just engage with our social media for the financial aid office. We post reminders for things about deadlines. We'll be posting info there once the FAFSA opens up. If there's anything that we get as far as outside scholarships that you can apply to, we'll throw it up on there. So definitely just to stay on top of everything super specific to Pacific University of Financial Aid, but then also some potential resources from outside. Please engage with us on social media, give it a follow, and that way you can just stay up to date with anything that's super relevant to financial aid for you all, right? And then talking about outside scholarships and just scholarships in general, we're starting to enter what I consider to really be like the busy season for scholarships, right? So most scholarships tend to open up sometime between September and November, and have their deadlines anywhere from February to April. So if you haven't started looking yet or haven't started taking peeks at outside scholarship resources, know that it's not the kind of situation where like it's too late, right, for the next academic year. You're really entering right now the best time to start looking, just because there's a ton of resources out there, but like I said, it can be a lot to sift through, right? So starting to look now will give you the best idea of all of the best resources to find between February and April, so you can get those scholarships in before their deadlines hit. So just know that at this point, you're not too late at all. You're starting to really hit the best time to start looking into these resources. So just stay engaged, and connect with me, and we can kind of find everything that's a good fit for you as well. Moving forward, talking about a couple other just really important things that I always want students to stay on top of and to know. First is just studentaid.gov. Like I said, you're probably familiar with the site. It's where you do the FAFSA through. It's where you can manage all of your loan and federal aid info. It can be a frustrating website to deal with, just because it can be down a lot of the times. It can have technical issues sometimes because it's a government website. But I always tell students to really get in when you get a chance and just poke around. Like, there's a whole bunch of really good info on here. You're not going to break anything or accidentally do anything bad on the website just by taking a look at your info. And it'll be things that will be relevant for you eventually, especially if you're taking out federal student loans potentially. So just know that you can get in here, start taking a look. A couple things you can do in studentaid.gov is you can view your entire borrowing history. If you've borrowed student loans, you can find out who your specific loan servicer is, right? So the federal government has different servicers who work with all federal loans, and they're who you'll specifically be working with for repayment once you enter repayment on your federal loans after you graduate. You can make student loan payments in studentaid.gov potentially with your servicer. There's that monthly payment estimator in there as well, which is a good resource, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So like I said, if you get a chance, get in, poke around. You're not going to break anything. You're not going to accidentally borrow more loans. Like, you can't do anything bad in there just by taking a look, and it's a good system to familiarize yourself with. These are all of the current federal loan servicers. Just like to show this, to give folks an idea of who you might see when you start looking at your servicers. There are a couple on here, and this link here will take you directly to a web page where you can find out who your servicer is as well. Again, finally, just want to show a couple of things that students I know you're familiar with, but just different terminology that you'll hear and where you can find this info. So Voxer Online is where you'll go through and complete that financial aid checklist, get everything set to go towards your student account in the fall and spring. ePay is where that student account lives, right? So I know that can be confusing sometimes that your financial aid portal and your actual billing portal are two distinct and separate entities, right? So just knowing where you can view each specific information as well. I'd just like to give us kind of an idea of that too. Finally, special circumstances. So I like to show this just because as someone who looks at a lot of FAFSAs and works with FAFSAs quite a bit, it is not always the best representation of people's actual situations, right? The FAFSA asks for a lot of info, but there's a lot of things on there that they don't care to ask, right? And I know that situations are different, right? And financial aid isn't a one size fits all in any scenario. So really just like to show this because students, if you've had changes in anything for your financial situation, we want to know, right? Because we want to see if there's anything we can do to help better tailor fit your financial aid to anything that you might have going on, right? So this can be loss of job or reduction in income, both for students and potentially parents. If there have been any medical expenses that haven't been covered by insurance, anything else out there, students, if anything's coming to mind, please, please, please get in touch with me, right? And get in touch with our office, just because we want to make sure that, again, like I said, the financial aid you're receiving is actually a good fit to your situation. And sometimes just by looking at the FAFSA, we don't know. So we don't know unless you reach out. So please, 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 students, connect with me, reach out to me, and I'll see if there's anything we can do on our end to help get your financial aid switched around. So a couple next steps, students, make sure you bookmark those continuing scholarships for students here at Pacific, and just keep an eye on the webpage December 1st once they open. Again, like I said, you've got December to March to really engage with those resources. So just know that you've got some time after they open to kind of sit down and apply whenever is a good time for you. If you're borrowing federal student loans, get into studentaid.gov, start taking a look at some of that info, just because if it's not relevant to you now, if you're borrowing, it'll be relevant to you eventually, right? And it's always a better idea to get on top of those things now rather than after you're done with school. Students, if you have the time and the bandwidth, potentially use any of those scholarship search engines. And I find it helps building a spreadsheet, even if it's super simple and rudimentary, just to track everything that you're applying to, and everything that you might hear back from. And then finally, one other thing that I think is super helpful, and I did this when I was applying for scholarships when I was in school, is just making some sort of list of everything that you're involved in. It doesn't have to be a resume or in any formal sense of the word. Like I just had a list of everything that I had done in the past that I wanted to make sure I put on my scholarship applications. And I think having a list is helpful just because sometimes when I was going through and doing the actual applications, I would forget what I had done in the past, right? And there are things that you really, really, really want to highlight on those applications. So make a list for yourself of things to include on there. And then you'll know once you're doing a scholarship application, if they say, hey, what are some of your accomplishments and some things that you really want us to know as we review your application? You won't miss anything that you potentially want them to know about when they consider your scholarship application as well. So finally, as always with financial aid, it's a field where there's a lot of moving parts. Things can change from year to year. Always, 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 you can come see us. You can make an appointment with your financial aid counselor, whether it's myself or Stacy England. You can also swing by the financial aid office if you've got time. We have no requirements to make an appointment. We're located in Marsh Hall, first floor here, in the bottom right-hand corner. Those are our windows. Please don't tap on the windows. Come inside and come up to the actual window indoors. But definitely like engage with us, right? We're here to help. And like I said, financial aid is not a one size fits all, and students have different scenarios and situations. And so if you ever need anything at all, just come see me and we'll see what we can do on our side. So all I have scheduled programming wise. Thank you, Lacey and Michelle, for being here.